Hi, Kiki.
Hello.
Hi, Cheryl.
Hola.
And hi, Jill.
Hello.
It's good to see you all. Let me just make sure if I'm
We have
remembering.
everybody. Everyone's here.
Okay.
We have Marcus.
Yeah. Hi, Marcus. All right. So our folks are here. We'll have other people join. Hi, Dawn. Welcome.
Hi there.
We're
Dawn Moore from Supervisor Burgess's office.
glad you're with us. Yes, so I know we may have some other folks join, but in the interest of getting through our material, let's just go quickly around the group, introduce ourselves and our orgs. Dunn got us kicked off. So I'll follow to say I'm Jeff Landau with the Racial Justice Coalition, Contra Costa County. I'm also a public defender, but I sit here as a member of the steering committee of the Racial Justice Coalition. And I will hand it off to Ronell.
I'm Ronell Ellis, Health Right 360 Reentry Network. Glad to be here this afternoon. Hello to all you fine folks.
Thanks, Ronell. Melvin, can I invite you to introduce?
Yep, afternoon, Melvin Russell with the Probation Department. Good to see you all.
Good to see you too, Melvin. And Kiki, if I could invite you.
Good afternoon. Kiki Williams, also with probation.
Hi again. Marcus, can I invite you to introduce?
Sure, Marcus Walton, representing Superintendent of Schools, Lynn Mackey.
Hi, Marcus. And Cheryl. Ms. Cheryl, would you like to introduce?
Yes, sir. Cheryl Suddeth, Racial Justice Coalition. Good to be here this afternoon. Thank you. And on the oversight body. Sorry.
Happy to have you as always. Jill, if I could invite you to introduce.
Sure, Jill Ray with Supervisor Candace Anderson's office.
Hi, Jill. And Chris, would you like to say hello?
Good afternoon, everyone. Chris James with the W. Haywood Burns Institute. I want to send a special shout out to Ronell for he put on like a broadcaster voice just then. I hope we hear that, you know what I mean, Wednesday at the event, because I definitely heard it. You sounded like you were signing off for the news, man. It was pretty nice.
Smoke and mirrors.
That's pretty good. We get a little bit more of that. And let me hand it off then to Nicole.
Hi, Nicole Popchak, Office of Reentry and Justice. Thank you.
Hi, Nicole. That was my best attempt at doing the radio. I think I should leave it to Ronell. All right. So we're here. We're able to get rolling. Let me do my share screen so we can all just have that in front of us as we're going. Okay. So here we are. Hope folks are able to see that this is the agenda. And we just went through with our introductions. I think we need not do the further background stuff. But if anyone does have announcements, this is a time to do that. I'll just invite if anyone wants to, that this is a time and that we're not restrictive in that. So if people feel as we're moving through that they want to chime in on anything, we got space to make it happen, I think, given the size of the group that we have. Okay, not seeing anything at this moment for announcements. let's run to public comment, and I'll invite any public comment. That would be on anything that's not on the agenda as the general concept. So anyone have anything for public comment before we go to other items on agenda? Hearing nothing, moving right along, remembering and inviting further comment if there is any as we come. This isn't your last chance, but let's keep rolling and go to the approval of the record of actions. I'm going to just scroll us through so we have that in front of us. I know everyone has on the agenda packet already, but even so, it doesn't hurt to just take a second, make sure that everyone present is reflected as they ought to be. I had a chance to look through, and it seemed to me that I didn't notice anything being out of place. Great to have the video as always. And I continue my appreciation for the more detailed minutes, which I think really do help folks to keep track of what's happening beyond the video. All these different opportunities to assist someone who's coming in new and not assuming the background. I think that this gets closer to access for folks that are coming fresh. And rolling quickly through all of that, we see our votes having gone through. Any comment on or discussion to be had on these minutes from last time? All seems fair on my end or accurate on my end. And hi, Jill, invite you, please.
I just didn't understand the one thing attributed to me toward the bottom of the agenda. It says coined the phrase, and I'm not quite sure what that
I
means.
saw
in
that
minutes.
too. I saw that too. I mean, I didn't invent the term, but you were using
I
it.
certainly did not.
But right. I took it in the spirit of that you were expressing that sentiment, but I did notice that too. But all right to leave as is from your.
I would rather it say that I commented
Yeah.
that it is important to hear lived experiences versus just watching flowcharts, or looking at flowcharts, which is, I think, the gist of what I was saying.
That does
After
better.
Ronell shared.
Yes, that does better capture. And I'm sorry to probably may cause motion sickness to be scrolling so quickly, but let me see where we were. That was near the bottom. Right here as we're at the now top of page 5. So made comment regarding lived experience versus flowcharts. You know, I'll have to say it's the rare experience where I've actually had the modification, but it is something that we ought to do. So I suppose it's making the proposed change of language. I would, Jill, would you say again, please? I'm sorry. If I could just ask you what your preferred.
I would just remove, cross out, coined the phrase.
Mhm.
And then that should be fine. Commented on lived experience versus flowcharts, I think is catches the gist of what I was saying.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So that I would entertain whenever we have the motion to approve a modification that Jill had just stated. Anyone else have other issue or anything to discuss before we would take a motion? I'll also invite public comment. Let me do that now. Public comment, if there is any on the minutes from last time. Not hearing anything. I would, if there's no further discussion, ask for a motion to approve the minutes, making the modification that Jill had referenced. Anyone motion, please?
I can.
Thank you, Kiki. Second, anyone?
I'll second.
Thank you, Marcus. That having the motion in the second, if there's no further discussion, call the vote.
Beth,
Yes.
Vicky,
Yes.
Marcus,
Yes.
Ronell.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Nicole. So maybe a little bit dry up until this point, but on the positive side, it's 3:12 and we're starting to get to real substance content here, or the forward action, which is good. So to bring us back to our agenda for today. Kiki, here's where I usually turn to you and ask if you could enlighten us on anything from JJCC.
Sure. So we met on the 7th, which I believe was Monday. And honestly, it was a relatively shorter meeting. And there was plenty of discussion about sort of the challenges that came along with not receiving a lot of responses to the service survey, the provider survey. And so there was some discussion about how to address identifying those gaps in services, and then an idea to possibly have each sort of participating agency survey internally to ask, for example, the DA's office, the probation agency, the public defender's office, which service gaps that they have observed and experienced in working through some of our cases and with some of our youth and families. There was then just some discussion about further development of our work plan and ultimately a decision to keep meeting every other month because someone raised the possibility of going quarterly, but we decided to keep it every other month. And we also learned that there was a new social worker in the public defender's office named Megan Lowe that was funded by SB 823. And that's the gist of it.
Thanks so much, Kiki. Chris, I see your hand.
Yep. Let me lower it now. Kiki, would you mind dropping the link to the survey in the chat again? Well, I guess two questions. First of all, do you guys still want responses to that survey? Because we're thinking, as we move into the next item, right, about the forum, that might be a good place to share it, to get community feedback. Hopefully folks who either, are themselves folks who would be good respondents to the survey or might know of folks who, should be responding to it and wanting to share it there, probably just drop it in the chat, at some point during the presentation. So A, do you all actually still want responses at this point? And B, if so, would you mind dropping the link in the chat or something like that so that we can sort of copy it and paste it and make sure that folks know about it next Wednesday?
Sure, I will drop the link in the chat. And to answer your question, I definitely don't think we're turning responses away. But we're also, one of the ideas that I think I shared when we were discussing sort of looking at our agencies and just asking for kind of real-time experience on what gaps that we've observed was just putting together, 4 prompts or something that we would all use to ask our peers and coworkers and colleagues so that we're asking the same questions and getting the same information. And so our plan was to really finalize that by the time of at the time of our next meeting, which is on April 4th. In the meantime, I absolutely think that we're still accepting responses to the provider survey. It's just I'm trying to find an intelligent way to articulate the difference. So the provider survey was developed again because we all said, what agencies or what service providers are any of us aware of that are out there in our community? And let's ask them, what they do and who they provide services to, what their focal point is, because then we can find out about services that are out there that we just don't know about, small, medium, large, what have you. And so, and then now this piece of it is for, Jeff, for instance, to go back and ask other folks in his office, hey, when you're working your cases, what are you running across most often as something that maybe if this thing was in place, we might not be here. You know what I mean? So that kind of thing. So it's kind of a little bit of a perspective shift, because I think probably a million times all of us or somebody in our office has already articulated service gaps, right? Either in a report or informally. So I think we're just deciding on a way to collect that information from all of you, all of us who are, we're experts really at identifying the gaps because we notice them all the time in cases that come across our desks. So it's kind of a two different perspective approach. I just wanted to make that clear, but I will go right now and find the link and I'll drop it in the chat.
Thanks, Kiki. I think that context helps kind of orient the project altogether. And right, getting our shared knowledge on these things is not simple. It's somewhere, but getting it together in a way that we can use the information and really try to leverage it so that people get the solutions that we know we're needing. Right, putting it together in a comprehensive form. Emilio, I see that you joined. I think it's Emilio. And if so, and you're available, you're welcome to unmute and introduce.
Hi, everyone. Yes, I'm Imalo, and I will be on camera and joining in just a minute. I just got a call from my son who is in West County, so I'm going to touch base with him. I'm happy to be here.
Glad you're with us. I muted myself there, but now it got off. Let's see. I have maybe no further questions because I'm going to incorporate whatever I'm thinking about from the last meeting into our community data forum discussions. So let me ask if anyone else here wants to ask a question or add anything about JJCC or what Kiki's brought to us for the update. Not seeing at this moment more. Thank you as always, Kiki, for keeping us informed. There's so much overlap and it keeps us, I think, most effective, efficient if we're not kind of going through territory that's already happened there and that we act more intentionally. So it's important that we take that time. Thank you.
No problem.
I don't think we have a vote that we need to take on this. So I would move us along to the community data forum update and expect that this would be the bulk of our time that's addressing this issue. Let's see. This can be a chance to walk through to page 6 of our packet. Sorry, here we are. And I think there's some, yeah, what I could do, if it makes sense, would be to pull up the updated version, which is going to be public to everyone, and that it's in the agenda packet that's attached to the meeting that's coming up, which is to say we're having the data event. I have the updated presentation. Any reason why I can't share the updated presentation, which is the actual content that we're talking about in light of it being in the agenda packet for the upcoming meeting? See how convoluted that sounded. But before we have comments on things that we've actually talked about and are changing, I would love to pull up the most current version. And yes, I'm going to do that then. So I'll stop share here. And it seems like most judicious way to move forward. At least that's my take on it. Yes. Okay. So now I hope folks can see it's a different font, still same thing, community data forum. You should see my mouse then moving back and forth here. And we'll roll through the content. I feel like maybe it just takes a moment worth saying what is intention here, right? I mean, the intention is certainly to orient this in terms of people's lives and not just numbers. And we've talked about that concept, but I, talking to a friend about this idea and I'm working on this thing and what is it about? And I think it's about moving the work forward, making use of what we've had thus far so that this work can continue. I mean, otherwise you can't ask for data and not use it, right? And we need to use that so it influences the policy. And sometimes it does feel like, are we just parading this stuff out here and nothing is going to happen with it? Knowing the change is incremental, I feel like this is essential that we take the fruits of the labor, put it out there to public, and public can say, this is not enough, or we have questions, or whatever it may be. But I think it is important that we move on the things we have and don't just kind of have progress, but no formal community input part. And frankly, for what it's worth, I hope that we get feedback from folks who are saying, this is not enough. We need to have more than this. Where's the other? But we'll see what people do say. So I'll just plan to roll through some of the content here. That's kind of my thought to do this so that everyone in our group has the chance to at least put eyes on what we're intending to show, because I think it's fair to say this is a presentation that's being put on by our group. So I don't want anyone to be feeling like I didn't sign on for this, or that's not a, appropriate sentiment for us. So this is a chance for input, feedback. I would say principally, Chris put together the content in the format that we have, which is bringing together a lot of the discussions and research of different parties coming together. So that ended up getting hammered out through little work sessions that Renell and Shayla and Chris and I were participating in regularly. So enough said, and just move on to the next clip. Yeah. Plus, why don't I have it in the format like you'd actually see the presentation? Okay. We're going to have facilitation handoff back and forth between Renell and Shayla, who've graciously agreed to be our facilitators. Going through what the agenda will be for everyone. Here's what we're going to cover. I am very glad to report that I had an updated conversation with Dante Clark. He is on schedule, willing to continue to participate as scheduled. He would be just after our agenda, bringing some of his writing and words to launch us into this event. And I'm expecting that'll be somewhere in the area of 3 to 5 minutes. Now we're 5-ish minutes into our meeting. We're going to have this short clip, which not sure that I had everyone see last time. Does anyone remember if they had seen in this group? Why don't I share, right? Again, I think in the interest of feeling like, hey, I didn't know we were saying those things, or whatever it may be. I think it's just worth our taking the moment to say, this is the clip that's here. And it's about 2 minutes from a film. And we had talked about it, at least just the discussion of the idea, but not the content. I think last time that Cheryl Suddiff, ACLU chapter, had invited me to attend an online screening of this film. And this is a snippet. It's available online, the entirety of the film. So there's not any sort of licensing concern as far as I can tell, because this was publicly available. So I will play this clip, making sure that in fact I can share sound. Yes. Okay.
I remember this hopeless feeling just overcome me. I couldn't take care of my family.
The biggest misconception about misdemeanors is that they are minor. The full consequences of getting a misdemeanor can be astronomical.
It hurt me for 10 years and it completely disrupted my life. And I have been trying to figure out how to get my life back on track. This will be a part of my story for the rest of my life.
When people are booked into jails for a week or a year or even a day, you just cannot avoid the trauma that's inflicted upon you. The moment you hit the jail, you don't come out of that unchanged or untouched. You witness trauma, you witness violence, and it changes you. It changes your community.
I tried to get a job at Amazon where my roommate worked. I called to Walmart and I called to several other retail stores. I got turned away because I had a misdemeanor charge for theft.
Not enough people talk about what it means to have a misdemeanor on your record. It can determine the kind of job that you get, to the kind of housing that you can qualify for, to the kind of schools that you can go to. A lot of people are harmed for life because of the smallest infractions.
They're being rendered homeless. They're going without food, without medication. Their children are suffering.
Due to misdemeanors, I lost my housing. Shortly after that, I lost my vehicle, which led to me losing my job. And it was just one thing after another, like kicks to the face. I had full custody of my children. They had to get to school. We had to sleep in the car, waking up at like 4 in the morning, getting to a laundromat to make sure that they have clean school uniforms.
I had worked so hard and all of that was ruined by one charge. One misdemeanor ruined my ability to get even just basic work.
Okay. I hope everyone was able to hear that and see at least relatively clearly. I know that there were a little bit of static audio things there, and maybe part of that is it being presented over Zoom. Maybe we can have a little bit of tweaking of that, but at least folks were able to hear what was being said. Any reflections on including this? And I can say, I think the intention, at least that I'd had, and I think the context for our discussions is trying to frame in ways without spending the whole time talking about the idea and really getting to the actual content, but helping remind that these are not numbers and charts. These are people, and these decisions end up having real impacts for individuals, even if it seems like we're just talking about arrests or whatever this is. And like, well, that makes a big difference. That has a lot of impact for someone, even if no charges are ever filed. Let alone if they are, and continuing. So that's the idea of including this. Anyone's thoughts on having it as part of the presentation before we'd move on?
Just wanted to call out, and we can talk about this when you get into like logistics. I don't know if there's an agenda item for logistics. I was trying to play it through the PDF and it was acting strange. So I'm assuming that there's probably going to be a projection of the PowerPoint itself.
That's my intention.
Okay.
And I have it downloaded so that it's not like a link to a website that may have an issue. So it should be on desktop, that there should be not any lag with that. I do think that that would be the simplest way to present it.
I might have a better link, Jeff, so I can talk to you offline about how I was able to show it from the movie link instead of, because there's a couple different links that I had to try, but I got it straight from the producer.
Okay, thank you. If you and I could talk whenever after meeting, that would be fabulous. I appreciate, because I think that does make a difference in terms of how clearly is this going to be heard in order to have the impact, so it's not distraction. Beyond that,
Jeff, this is a powerful segment here, and I get we were trying to humanize the numbers. My question is that, if this piece, because this piece makes me say, so what do we do with this, right? It's like, wait, misdemeanors shouldn't affect people, right? We're society, we're told it's a misdemeanor, it's not supposed to affect you the way that a felony does, right? And my initial thing is watching this, well, what are we doing? And I think it's an important piece for people to see, but I don't know that here is where it goes, because we're going to now talk about data, and we talk a little bit about misdemeanors. It just doesn't, to me, it doesn't seem like it goes with what's being presented here. And maybe it's close enough that it works, but my initial reaction is to sort of, well, what are we doing about it, as opposed to, well, this is a study that we're studying it, and that's what I see. I see is that we're going to do some more studying, when right here it looks like we need to start taking action to remove those 9,000 statutes to stop ruining people's lives. There's probably other things we need to do at the front end, et cetera, to stop people from getting these misdemeanors in the first place. But this just, to me, screams, hey, let's not just look at data, because we're not going to come away with any solutions to this. But maybe that's just my need to try to solve things instead of looking at them holistically. So I'll take the lead of the rest of the group, but I just wanted to point that out from my perspective.
thank you, Marcus. I'm appreciative of you bringing that. I mean, I do think, just parenthetically here, it is important that it's not just all either silence or, yeah, that looks good, right? You're bringing like real thought to this, which is ideally, it's not just rubber stamp, but we're having real discussions, so that's good. And I guess, I mean, I want to open, if anyone else has thoughts on this, I would have a quick response to say that I think with perhaps a little bit of framing of it, in that what we're doing here is this slice of what the oversight body is about. Part of what we do is data and reporting on data, but also part of what this group is community engagement and funding. And if we have more funding, if we have more engagement in real answers and investment in community, we're not going to be having these sorts of misdemeanor incarceration responses. And also the diversion is really clearly in line with these sorts of things. And I think it's also kind of narrowing the focus to a certain degree, because I do think you can get into these bigger policy discussions about like, well, how about serious murder, these sex offenses, whatever, more serious other things. And it's like, okay, that is important, and we're probably not going to be able to touch that. But this sort of stuff, we can, in our little group, of saying, we're going to not enforce these sorts of things, or we're going to divert these types of offenses, or we're going to invest, that's going to have an impact. I mean, we need to tie it in so that link is there. And so I am receiving that feedback and thinking about it. But Cheryl, let me turn to you.
Yes. Sir Marcus. So one of the reasons we addressed this in ACLU, and then we had this panel discussion about it. And one of the reasons the film was even made was because of exactly what you say. People look at misdemeanors and they're like, oh, it's trafficking. Oh, it's domestic violence complaints. Oh, it's they didn't pay their child support. Oh, it's just a misdemeanor. But it's exactly that reason why it has to be brought up, that is something behind just that ticket, or is it something behind just what we are terming is not only felonies that are causing people so much life angst and so much grief and preventing them from living. Just this one slide will tell you what's happening in people's lives. And when every time I've done this presentation of watching this movie for about this documentary for it's like 35, 40 minutes in length, in full. And then we have the discussion afterwards. There's so many people who say, I did not know. I had no idea. And we need to do these more and more. And every time they requested more. I sit on the board of the ACLU for Albany, Berkeley, Northeast Bay, which covers Richmond. And every single time we get that reaction. And the problem is that it is that hidden criminal legal, it's a hidden criminal legal quagmire, because it's not a felony. So most people don't know about it, and people don't understand it, and they don't know the impact it is on people's lives. And so we need to bring it to people's attention. And even if it is just this small window. Now, see me, I would show the whole film. I'd take 40 minutes and show the whole film so people get the full effect that it has little to do with race and gender and more to do with class and access to the system. Because you get caught up in this bubble of, I can't pay my tickets, so I get my car impounded. So now I got these warrant. I got the warrant, so I can't drive to work. So I can't pay the ticket. And then all of a sudden I'm scared. So I got to see this whole circle. And then I get arrested for 2 nights. And I got to spend 2 nights in jail. And because I got arrested and I got to spend 2 nights in jail, I can't go to work. And now I can't go to work. You see, I lost my job. And I lost my job. And now I can't pay my rent. And I just lost my housing. And so I lost my housing. And I can't pay my child support. And it's this endless circle. And most people don't even think about it. And guess where it all started? Because I couldn't pay my damn traffic tickets. A misdemeanor. It may have even not even been a misdemeanor. It was a traffic ticket. Or I ran through the bridge toll too many times without paying. So we have to bring it to people's attention. Infraction, there's a word I'm thinking of. Thank you, Ronell. I couldn't think of it. And so we have to bring it to people's attention because nobody thinks it's them. Nobody thinks it's that. So there's why I totally support this. And maybe, Jeff, maybe we figure out how to either play the whole thing, or we figure out how to tell people that we will be playing the whole thing later. Maybe that's the impact.
Thank you, Cheryl. Just in that one, the concept of how can we have more of it? I think at a minimum, we can be telling people, here's how you can access the remainder of it, and consider having an event where we could present more of it. I do think to have the full context is important. But before I start talking more, I saw Ronell and then Marcus. Ronell, please.
Yeah, basically just ditto what's already been said. Obviously Cheryl always brings passion. So, but it's deceiving, right? We know that a couple of misdemeanors can easily turn into a felony as well. And it's the blemishes. Not everybody is familiar with the expungement process. Folks who have misdemeanors don't even know that kind of stuff is even out there at times. And it is the cycle. It's the snowball, right? It just picks up speed on. I mean, several people I know personally. I went way past misdemeanor, so I can't talk about it from a personal perspective. But things, people can't get into law enforcement with misdemeanors, and on and on. It carries weight. And so diversion is a way for somebody to demonstrate, right? That they want to get their life together and that they want to get things like this off their record. And if they get them off their record and clean their slate, they can possibly be productive and get a better job. I mean, just think about it. I'm 30 years removed from the system. 30 years. I have a job. I've been working for 30 years since I've been clean and sober, but I'm ruled out of tons of jobs. I can't elevate at all. At all. I'm disqualified, right? And we talked about the jury pool, right? As soon as they find out I'm an ex-felon, I'm done. But I'm a taxpayer and I own multiple houses. I can't even have a gun to protect my home. My homestead, which I'm a taxpayer in the county, I'm disqualified. And I'm not even a violent felon. I don't even have weapons on my record, right? 30 years of demonstration, clean and sober, helping out, volunteering, going into jails, going back into prison, going into CDC, teaching all kinds of courses. I'm disqualified still to this day. And it's just blemishes. And I've expunged, and I've got a certificate of rehabilitation, and I'm waiting on a pardon. I did all of that, but I'm still garbage to the system. But I'm rolling with everybody else. I'm paying taxes. I'm solid. Payroll taxes, property taxes, all kind of stuff, contributing all around the board. But it's dormant everywhere else. I can't tap into those resources that I'm putting into because they had me on paper years and years ago. And so I'm still paying, right? Even though I've demonstrated. So this is valuable because it's tangible, right? It's relevant to the topic of what we're talking about. And some folks can't touch it. And so you need something like this to at least scratch the surface. And yeah, we need this in that presentation. Sorry about that.
No, thank you, Ronell. I appreciate everything you're saying. Whatever nerd lawyer in me or instinct is to be like, actually now former felony conviction is not a barrier to jury service, so you can serve. But the point being that it has its hooks in you no matter what. And how many people have things in their lives that they've done and it doesn't get rubbed in their face through the rest of their lives, right? But this thing in system is like, no, we notice it. It keeps getting checked on the boxes. So it's not fair, and it does continue, and it has a huge impact on people. Marcus, please.
I just want to say thank you for all of the input, and I would double down on what Michelle said, that we should find a way to play the whole thing. I don't think that, I know that this small portion of it, it's there, it's thought-provoking, but I think if we're going to tell the story, and that we should play the whole thing and make sure that it gets framed in the context of the data that's being presented and the reason we're presenting the data and the work that's getting done. So I don't know if there's an idea about how long the presentation is going to take. Michelle, you said it was 30 to 40 minutes. So
Yes, sir.
I think we should find a way to play it all, or even if we can't play it all now, find another time when the subcommittee or the overall body can do a screening so that people sort of see and understand this. Because I think it's important information to have. I just want to see the story get told in a way that brings the attention to it. And my fear is that we'll see this at the beginning and then go through the data and have the conversation about the data without, there's going to need to be some framing to make sure that this continues to be connected to the data that gets brought up later.
Thanks, Marcus. So yes, I think we're hearing several folks being into the idea of giving this the full space when we can. I do think agenda, other items, kind of planning that we've had up until this point is going to make it impractical for us to show the entire film at this event next week. And it's resonating with us, and it's going to be important for us to have the full further context picture. So I think there's no reason why we can't find a way to do this. I don't know if it's going to be what that looks like exactly, that the presentation of it, but I don't know. We have our own, we co-sponsor, there's something, a screening of a film that we think is important to share with people seems like something that we can achieve and worthy of our time in it. And I think our discussion right now, and Marcus, what you're bringing to it, and Renell being present, is going to allow us to act with intention when this is coming, right? Renell and Shayla are going to be able to give context that's needed. So it's not just slide, 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 and people are like, what's going on here? Why are we showing it? So hopefully we can incorporate the concepts that we've been talking about and the shared points when it's presented next week. My thought would be to move to next slides. Does everyone feel like we're good to keep rolling? And I'm looking at our time. We're scheduled. Does anyone know off the top of their heads? I'm trying to remember. Is it 4:30?
Yep.
Yes, thank you. Just what I had thought. Okay. So we just saw that. Now, Kiki was generous in taking some time with me before our meeting to go through some of the workflow, the system workflow concept. So what, and we had talked about this at prior meetings of our subcommittee of, well, how are we going to kind of frame some of this stuff? Meaning we're going to show you this chart, but before we do, here's some kind of framing in terms of mindset, tone with art, which is the words, the writing that Dante is going to bring, and then film, which is going to be a little bit more kind of not nonfiction, but right, like poetry is a little bit more abstract. Now these folks are talking in the film, which is a little bit more like people talking in their own individual concrete narrative. And now we would move with that to, let's start talking a little bit more rigid, like this is how one thing leads to the next, which isn't as much like narrative or art, but we're trying to gently transition before we start looking at a chart, because I think if we just start off with bar graph, it's going to have glazed over. So long intro to be saying, and I'm seeing things in chat. If not, got it. What I was talking about with Kiki and our planning group would not be to run through all the steps of this, because we'll never get through all of it, and we'll start explaining each and every step, and that'll take the whole time. But I think it allows us to give a general sense without just saying, hey, it's complicated, because that's sort of an excuse type thing of like, well, there's all these different pieces and all these different people, so I don't know how you're supposed to, that's not the answer as far as I'm concerned. I mean, right, we want to be looking at this stuff because we think that things can be done, even if we're not going to fix everything. There's some smart moves you can make if you look at the data. So it's kind of explaining there's several steps in the process. And as Kiki was bringing up when we were talking, there's different actors who have responsibility at different stages. So we can't just put responsibility on district attorney or probation or sheriff or any one person or group actor, because certain groups don't have decisions over the other things, right? So you can't tell probation, stop arresting these people, blah, blah, blah. That we're not out there doing that, or stop filing these felonies, blah, 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 which they're not doing that. That's district attorney, and vice versa. If we were to go to district attorney and say, stop all these arrests that are going, they're going to say, that's not us, right? We get the things that come in. So we know this has helped frame who does what part and explaining kind of the different paths that this can take, which I think is another concept. Some of it is there's many steps and there's many different decision makers, which means that there's many different steps and decision makers, there's decision points, right? There's ways, there's places where you can make a particular change from one step to the next. And that can influence outcomes. It's not going to change everything, but it changes the trajectory. So that's the idea, is that we have this as a general visual as we talking about what are we doing with this data and what are we really looking at? We're looking at the ways that people's lives are impacted by these systems, and how we need to know how it works in order to try to understand it so that we can change it and have better outcomes. And this is kind of breaking it apart into its pieces. So, me talking a lot about it. Anyone have thoughts as we're rolling through this first chart of, I mean, I guess the idea of using a chart at all, and also some of the stuff that I'm talking about, some of the messaging.
Jeff, are you presenting this to the public?
This will be included in the chart, in our presentation, that is.
Okay.
So what we're seeing at this point is like slide by slide. When we have our event on Wednesday, everyone's seeing it now, whatever it'll be. And it's not to say that there can't be any changes, but it's an agendized thing. We've already gotten it set out what it is, and this is kind of giving everyone a chance to give comment on what it would be. I mean, even if it's saying, you know, we had comment at our last meeting and not everyone is in agreement at this point, so let's highlight that here. Or maybe if we give this explanation of one portion that we're all comfortable with it, so long as we explain this is why we're showing this right now. But yes, this would be part of the presentation. And something that Shayla brought to our group, and I won't be, also to directly respond, I won't be presenting. It will be Renell and Shayla. I mean, I'm there as like background tech, happy to unmute when necessary, but my intention is not to talk at all. Okay, let me move to the next chart, right? Just knowing time, all other factors. It's not too late for us to go back to things. So we were missing last time around anything talking about the juvenile system. And that really, that previous, if I'm remembering, doesn't have anything that's truly reflecting juvenile processes being separate. So there's something to be said in that. Like, if, what are the main points? Why are we including this? Well, juvenile system, let's remember that that's also a place where policy decisions have big impact on people's day-to-day life experience, and whether something is prosecuted or someone goes into detention rather than having some sort of other diversion opportunity is major. So it's remembering, orienting that, and then also helping people remember that this is a different system, right? So if you're trying to hold someone accountable and make sense of what we're doing here, to know this is a different set of decision makers, different actors, so that when we're saying, you know, DA, you do this, sheriff, you do this, remembering who's actually in charge of that, because we don't want to waste our energy on trying to push someone to do something when that's not actually in their hands. So similar to the other, intention is not to say, all right, a crime occurs and then you see the line goes juvenile in custody. We'll go on forever like that. But just saying there are these various steps and there are different decision makers at the different stages. We can't change everything, but there are parts where we can influence, and that's helping us make sense of the things we have here. In the chat, got it. Broke this one into two different slides because there's a lot of text. But the idea being these different steps, different points where there can be influence, where we can make a change or something. Okay, I'm going to keep moving ahead and invite, just comment as it's coming here. Folks know to, do the raise hand. If you're feeling something at any moment, we're small enough of a group, just I invite you to jump in and raise hand and do that. Emil?
Yes, I was just putting it in chat to not interrupt the flow, and I know I logged on just a little late because I was getting a call from my son at the same time, but could you, so I apologize if it stayed in the beginning, but could you just in a nutshell share the objective, what is the objective of the presentation? And then also, is the expected audience, is it lay people, or is it going to be a mixture of lay people and people who work in the criminal legal field? Or I was just wondering about, like, not wanting it to be really jargon heavy if it's just mom and dad off the street.
Yeah, thank you for those points. I guess second point of who's supposed to be there, I would think that it's going to be a mix. I mean, the mindset that I have for it, and I think we've talked about it, is that it would be not as many like regular system actor people, but just folks who have life experience that are interested in coming to this. That said, there will be some whatever regular actor people like me and others on this call, but the intention is that it's broader than that. And what's the idea anyway? My short version of it would be that we need to work with what we have. And I think there's reason to be saying what we have here is not enough. We should be having data from all these other people. Plus, we should have more detailed data from the people who are giving it. It should be more detailed, and we should be getting it from these other people, right? Which I think is true. And the only way to get more and to have this thing be of any value is to be sharing what we've done so far, have communities say, that's concerning to us, or we want to do this or that with it. We should be getting more, because then we can go back to the different actors. I mean, we only have this seat, this RJOB exists because the supervisors are hearing from constituents that this is something that matters to them, right? So there need to be these points where we check in on the things we've been doing and community saying this is worthwhile and should continue. And there needs to be more of this. And if people are hearing it and we're kind of like not interested or feel whatever it may be. So I think in order for us to do any change here, and it's going to be incremental, we have to work with this data and try to have it as a springboard for the next steps, whatever those are. I'll also just add there that I think not having data is, from the perspective, my perspective of continually wanting to just change the policy already, is that, well, we don't have the data. So now we have something, we're sharing it, and we're making it clear why we're doing what we're doing. Weren't these things already addressed? Wasn't this stuff already fixed? We have a more progressive administrations. Well, this data is suggesting, no, it's still a problem. And some of the stuff has become worse, right? So we can look at that. And I think that's the idea, is it's move our work forward and potential more accountability, responsibility to the extent we can. Other thoughts on where we are so far, or Emilio, if there's more that you haven't thought in response to that, I invite it, but others too. You did unmute that. I will invite you to say more if you have any thought.
No, I just wanted to say thank you. That's what I thought the point of the meeting was, to share data, to give a soft analysis and to gather community feedback. But because that video was shared, I got maybe the point had changed. So I think the framing of the why of showing that video is important, because I agree with what Renelle was saying, that it seems a little, or if I understood Renelle correctly, it's slightly off topic unless it's framed appropriately.
I appreciate that. Thank you for bringing us back to that concept of, why are we doing what we're doing? It never hurts to take another moment to ground ourselves in that. So this next segment, as I'm going to the presentation, is a little bit of background into who we are anyway, and why are you folks talking to me? Meaning, like, I'm here on a Zoom call, and who is this talking, and why are they going through this data? So it's kind of just giving background, and here are your presenters. Here's why we're doing what we're doing. And trying to distill this as best we can. It'll be more than this. A lot of the things that we have on the slides are missing important details by design, because if you include all the important details, then we just got paragraphs and paragraphs, and you just tell someone to read the agenda minutes. We have to make it more reduced so that the person talking can highlight these things, but still give more detail. Okay, going through some of the stuff that's there. Again, why are we looking at any of this stuff? Why are we looking at the data anyway? Well, this is all building on the work that we've been doing for a long time, right? This group comes off the task force, and the task force already had its findings. And one of those findings was these high arrest rates they're a big part of the problem. Like, it's not just that they're there, but arrests is the beginning of the filter, right? And then, as Kiki and I were talking about, if you don't get arrested, then none of this other stuff ends up happening, all these other phases, later things. So that's a big piece of how it's all working. And do we even know that there were disparities before? Yes, we do. We went through this and we analyzed it. So that was not a question. Maybe it's just one kind of blanket thing that we can do. No, it's, I mean, this is my quick response to these things would be saying, we already found out that part of it is that certain jurisdictions, certain areas are a big part of the problem where, wow, this is completely out of whack in this city or this jurisdiction, and that we need to have targeted solutions. Sentence enhancements was one of the things that we found. Adult and youth. So those were things before. Okay, so what the data is that we got now is in the context of this before. Have all these problems just emerged that we're going to see in the numbers? No, there have been problems since forever. And we also have a little bit more context of, but like what exactly was going on. This gives a sense of who is having the brunt of the bad policy in the county. I did say in our little planning meeting, I do need to take a moment to just like check in on this point of juries. We have not talked about it that much here in this group, but certainly something near and dear to my heart because trial attorney. And it's something that we had a pretty simple solution for that we proposed. And I think it's worth at not this meeting because we're having a lot of focus at this time on planning for our data session, but at our upcoming meeting, our next one, and also just at the different spaces where we go to be checking in on that point, asking the relevant parties if that's public protection where it may end up landing, or we all are in different spaces. So I'm bringing up this point to be saying there was supposed to be a fix that got us back to regional juries, which was supposed to mean better representation, because we knew that part of the problem with jury underrepresentation was this bad policy change. So We're good. There's that, and at the risk of going into unnecessary detail, but why am I even checking in so much about this? It's come to my attention that there is a new law this year that is to be requiring the Franchise Tax Board as a source of jury roles beyond DMV and voter, which has always been a problem because it's under capture and tax gets everybody. So we should just use the tax rolls. That is the California law now. And apparently our county is in a very small handful, if not the only, that is driving, either it's dragging its feet or somehow we're behind in implementing this change. So that's an issue of concern to our oversight body, I'd say, and that we already made these findings. We said that it was the things within our power we should be doing, right? As Marcus, you're saying, like, you know, what are we doing about this stuff? What's the plan as we have it? And if there's something that we could be doing and are not, we need to lift that up in this space. So saying that, knowing that it's not on our list to have a vote on it as much as it's clearly within the materials for us to comment on. So not a diversion from the content, but something I did want to raise before moving on, as this is part of capturing the history. And the chart from before. Yeah, it's, I think, worth noting that as far as I can tell, 2015, the right side of the chart, that's the last of any of the detail that we do have. So if we're going to have a sense of, like, has anything gotten better? I don't know of any place where we know, like, has 7.5 gone up, gone down? Do we know anything? So it's something of concern for all of us. But also it's just part of this bigger chart to be saying to folks, what do we have already? We have stuff, but it ends in 2015. So we need to look at more current things if we're going to be saying this is what should change or shouldn't. Still need to. Yes. Jill, I'm seeing that note from you.
Sorry, somebody was asking me a question about the noticing of this meeting and I was answering them. So I was trying to, my point of the question was, is this going to be this group presenting this information to the public? Or is it more of an open forum of providing information and then looking for feedback from the community? So that's where that question lies. And then that will determine how the noticing should go on this public meeting.
Right. And I should say, I think it's in progress to be noticed that there's an agenda that we presented with, at least had coordinated with Nicole. So if that's responsive, I think we're on track for that already.
We have the notice, but it was more of, yes, we have the notice, but the members themselves have to be here, the quorum of the members, if we're making it a, you know, a CEF meeting, right? So I think we do. It sounds like Jeff, you're going to be there, Ronell, and then looks like Marcus too. So
Well, then the other, yeah. And so then to add to that, if you have more people from the RJOB and it ends up a quorum of the full RJOB, that's the other piece. Is it going to just be this and limited to this? Or are you going to have other RJOB members potentially participating or involved in this meeting? Then it would be a notice to the full RJOB. And again, you know, the question comes down to, is this simply a presentation? Or are you looking for public feedback? Because there's different ways to notice things and different requirements based on that, if it's meant to be a meeting versus a public forum.
I think, yeah, I mean, I'm a little bit confused about where the difference there lies. I mean, I think I'm appreciating what you're saying, Jill, in terms of that they're different in terms of how they're framed. Much of it is presenting this, but we are asking for feedback also. So I don't want to be presenting it as, I think that's the best way that I could capture it would be to say, we have a lot of information here that's in the presentation that's really to be just shared. And then we are inviting feedback too.
Right. So there's different ways to do feedback. And Jeff, I know you know this because of being involved in public meetings. So in a traditional meeting format, you're going to have an agenda and you're going to have public comment on each agenda item versus more of a forum where you might have a total presentation and then open it up to people to speak. And then are you going to limit their speaking to 3 minutes or so I mean, there's lots of different ways to look at this. And I think that that's the question that was being asked of me is like how, not only, I mean, there's the minor question of, is this just a subcommittee meeting? Is it open to the full body? Is it more of an open forum? Is it more of a public present? It's just lots of little nuances that I think for the general public could be confusing depending on which way you're going, or could be limiting to which way you're going, and also impacts how Nicole publishes this, as well as your intent. If your intent is more presentation rather than public feedback, that's different. So I guess that's where I'm unclear on sort of the full intent of this entire. I mean, it's great material, it's great information. I think it's important to get out there. It's just really clarifying, like, what is the goal, what is the intent, and what is kind of like the layout of the format to engage people and not shut people down.
I think so definitely the plan or the point was to share this information with the public and to get feedback from them about what they think is missing, what sorts of questions they would like to answer, what sorts of direction they would like to see maybe even this body taking in terms of, beginning to look at addressing some of the things that are going on. And I know that we were concerned about having, so many people from the R job or a particular subcommittee show up that it, even if we didn't put an agenda out or something like that, that we would end up meeting quorum and then needing to have done all of those things, which is, I think, where the sort of confusion came up as far as we need to notice this is something because probably we're going to have 4, 5, 6 people at least from the body show up to this, and which, I mean, I don't think 6 would be putting us in danger of, I think the body is 18. So I don't think 6 would be an issue, but I think that was the overall thought, right? Was we might have a plurality of folks show up from the body, and knowing that can happen, we probably want to notice it in some way so that we don't end up needing to cancel the meeting because people, were willing to show up after hours to talk.
Right. And I think Zoom gives you the platform so you can do webinar, right? So you could have this be a meeting of the subcommittee and just have those subcommittee members on the webinar. And then you could also choose whether you're doing chat during the meeting presentation, whether you open it up for questions, comment. There's lots of ways to do that, I think, on Zoom, that ability to control that. And it's just, it's just that really fine line. I've been part of presentations where, they supposedly want feedback, but they don't make it easy or really apparent that they're going to accept it.
Thanks, Jill. Cheryl, I see your hand. I did want to just have and then Marcus, I see you're just after, that we did talk about webinar versus the regular Zoom meeting format. This is not, that's an important or I'm losing my language. It's not a essential issue from my perspective. But I will say that we had talked about it and folks were feeling like webinar is a little bit less accessible to your everyday person who may want to make a comment in public, which we were saying, let's just do the regular meeting format. However, it doesn't have the, we were not taking into mind how that might have implications for board presence or anything other than just like someone who's coming to the meeting. How does it feel to them to try to say something? Let me stop talking and invite Cheryl and Marcus.
Marcus is on the committee, so I'm gonna let him speak first.
No, Ms. Cheryl, go ahead. Mine is, no, please go ahead.
So gracious, so gracious. Thank you, sir. It actually was a couple of things. One of them is exactly what Jeff said about webinars. I can tell you one thing that's very frustrating about webinars. And when you invite the public to a meeting that's supposed to be a public meeting, it's supposed to be a public listening session, and then you tell them that they can't speak and they're going to sit there and listen to you speak for an hour and a half, it's very frustrating. Very. And all they can do is either put a Q&A or you shut down chat. Don't invite them. You might as well just say that come and listen to us talk at you. We don't care about your opinion. So I said that before and I will say it again. Don't call it a public listening session. Don't call it a public meeting if we are not willing to hear what the public voice is. It is no longer a public hearing. I don't see the problem here. I don't see an issue in noticing it as a public meeting. Notice it. Do what we have to do to get the public voice heard. If that means that everybody from our job shows up, then everybody shows up. I think they jumping through these hoops to figure out the administrative tasks, then we figure it out. Because what we've been working on the last few months and trying to give this data to the public and have the public understand it, underlying all of that is the public. And we need to ground ourselves in the fact that that is what we're here for. We're supposed to be getting these out to the public. We're supposed to be helping the public understand what it is we've been working on, not trying to figure out and talk to each other. Yeah, we already know what it means. We're trying to help the public understand what we're working on and give it to them and help them know kind of what's behind these numbers, you guys. And I think it's unfair of us to keep what is the word? Parsing out who gets to know the information and at what cost it takes for us. So the other one is, there's a famous James Baldwin quote that says, if one really wishes to know how justice is administered in a country, one does not question the policemen, the lawyers, the judges, or the protected members of the middle class. One goes to the unprotected, those precisely who need the law's protection most, and listens to their testimony. It's in his book, No Name on the Street. And I would say, you go to the street and you listen to the people who need the law's protection most, and you listen to their testimony. We don't need to keep talking to each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. Marcus, please.
I have less concern about whether it's a webinar or open meeting and whether the quorum as well. That stuff will work itself out. I'm more concerned about the steps we're taking to get people to attend this session. Where's the publicity? Where is the outreach that's being done? And if we need to step up and do that, I'm willing to use the vehicles that we have here, although we're getting sort of close to the meeting date for us to use them effectively. So that's more my concern right now, of making sure that we have outreach and people can get here. In terms of the webinar, you can still do a webinar to keep the the subcommittee members and the committee members out of the main session and still allow people to speak if people sign up to speak. So we could, if that's a technical issue, I hope, that we have someone who's pretty proficient in Zoom who can lead that effort if that's the way we need to go. But yeah, just the publicity portion of it. And I've got to leave here in 8 minutes. So we can, if there's anything we need to vote on, please let me know.
Thanks, Marcus. Fair to keep us on time. The right 8 minutes is when we're scheduled to be done. So that's fair enough. And the points that you're making, I agree that we need to get to promotion. So let's be there as the very next issue. And I guess I'll just say, yeah, let's all for sure be reaching out to our networks. It's been something that we've been flagging. This is coming up, certainly have said at our coalition meetings. So we know that that's coming, and this is all the more firm than it had been of when's the time and date. And we're right on the brink of having a link that we're going to send out to everyone. So then it's just clear that click this button and you're there. Right about these details. It is important that we at least know, I mean, all of this is important, but in structure, how are we going to handle public comment, right? So Jill, what you were saying, yeah, I do think we need to have a cap on time, because if it's anything like the forum, the listening session we had about juvenile hall, there were many, many, many people who wanted to talk. And if you just let folks talk, then it could have been the first 2 or 3 folks that take up the whole space. So in order to truly give opportunity for people to speak, we do need to have caps on things and not have it just arbitrary midway through now, oh, no, too much of this person. So I think, from my perspective, 3 minutes is a lot of time to talk if you have something to say on a subject. So that doesn't seem unfair to just kind of have that in mind and set out. And I mean, I do think the general concept structure we were having was going to be more open forum-ish, I suppose, which would be that there's the larger presentation of the information up front of here's who we are, sharing what we've done. And then when we get to the end of the presentation, which I'm just going to move ahead for a second because we have limited time, talking about who we are, what we've been doing. And now,
have you done a time check of how long it's going to take you to run through this presentation generally?
Yeah, Chris has gotten us benchmarks on timing of where we're trying to stay. And we didn't delegate it here, but I'd gladly take on the role of timekeeper to be saying, hey guys, if we need to extend this, we can, but we're at the time where we were supposed to kick to the next session. So yes, in general. And the time, just remind everyone, was 6 to 7:30 was the plan. This is the actual new data that we've received, and we spent a good chunk of time today talking about how can we utilize this. When I say we've received, it's the publicly accessible information, and that's definitely further discussion to be had about why don't we have more, but we will all talk on that. And here we finally are to the segment now that there's been presentation of all the information. And really it is my thought intention with this is that it would wait until the end, especially because we could get into a situation where we're on slide 5 of 6. We have it kind of fluid and we've got 30 speakers. We don't want to be telling people, hey, you actually need to wait now for the next 30 minutes and we're going to start taking more comments, right? So if there's a point where we're going to have it, then I think we just are solid on this is when it is. And my thought is, unless it's something like clarification that can come in a way, I would really just reserve everything for end. And then there's this more robust period where we're talking about what does this mean to any of you? Even including this didn't make any sense. I don't know what you're talking about, or this data is not right, or whatever the people who are there, their feedback which we would be, Nicole, as you're saying, recording. And also just there in real time to be receiving the information that's going to inform us to move forward. Because we have then more of a mandate when we go to the next space, wherever that is, the full quarterly meeting, because not everyone's going to be there at the quarterly, right? I mean, not the full RJOB is going to be at this. So there'll be things that we can bring there and say, hey, a lot of people wanted to hear this. They're concerned about these issues. So for example, will there be discussion about sheriff oversight? Some people may say one thing or the other on that. So we'll see what the comment is, right? But it's something that gives the opportunity for reflection and feedback. This is a repeat of the previous charts, but it's going through again. So it's just kind of another opportunity for prompts. Chris.
Yeah, just point of clarification, should actually be, I think if you page back through the data slides, I think it starts with adult population. And
oh,
then
yes.
Youth. So they look very similar, but they're not exactly the same, right? They're talking about both of the different populations by age that are represented in the county.
You're absolutely right. And I was moving too quickly there. So
Yeah, I just
yes,
respond. Same way.
our separate charts, we will go through them individually and the process for that. Meaning, let's break these down. Are there questions you have? Let's break these down. Are there questions that you have or feedback that you have? Additional feedback, closing announcements, which will include encouraging people to apply for the spaces that we have open. We're going to use that as a point to do at the very end to say there's spaces on the RJOB that are unfilled, and also to be promoting the website, which is going to be sharing the data publicly from the county. That's kind of like where all this is going to be held. And
Just the PowerPoint, the agenda and the PowerPoint, those are the only documents you're posting?
Yes, that's everything.
And then promotion is going to be done kind of independently. There's not like a set language that we're communicating out of the purpose that we're all aligned on, that we're communicating the same message. I just want to understand where you want ORJ's support in the promotion piece.
I think that sharing the message that there's an event that's being co-hosted and it's involving system data I know that giving timing and everything, it's not practical that we can hammer out language of what this would be. And I guess in a word, no, we haven't had more marketing or language to present. I mean, we have what's here. This is everything. Now, I guess I've been saying to our coalition network, there's going to be this event where we're sharing the data, but it's not streamlined. And that's enough, whatever, me talking in circles on that. I do think that hopefully we have enough here in terms of what our intention is and just everybody being present that we can send it to folks without it being a barrier to let people know how to participate. But if there is anything that anyone feels like, this should be the way that we share the word more simply, I invite that. And I do think we should share with each other. For example, the email that I sent to coalition, I would share that with everyone else on this group. So anyone's thoughts on that? Given that we're at the last second. Yeah, Jill, please.
At the last second, I only have one question clarification, and I'm confused because I don't remember where it was last left, but on page 20 of 34 of the presentation here, urge the Board of Supervisors to create a sheriff's oversight board pursuant to government, So I know there was much discussion in this, and then it went to the full RJOB, and I kind of got lost where it was from there. Did the full RJOB push that forward?
We did in
Okay.
August, we voted on it. And then at the quarterly, I know Paul Reyes had said it's not made its way yet to PPC. It's going to either December or early year. And then at this last quarterly, we said, just checking in on the status, and we're expecting that it was gonna make its way to PPC. But we all voted in August
Yeah,
of,
okay.
yeah.
I remember there was discussion, but I couldn't remember where it was left. So, okay. Okay.
Jeff, I just have a quick question. Can you go back to that? I know we're getting ready to leave, but I know just for this presentation, can you go back to the criminal legal system flow thing that Shayla
Yes.
uses, that thing? I just think that when we're talking about data and we're talking about touch points, because when you're talking data, if we're not tying that data into this flow chart, it seems disjointed to me. It would be nice to say on this chart, or at least when we're talking about this chart, somewhere, like you were talking about trial systems, right? So on the right-hand side where you see trial, or when you see talking about the jury system and the lack of Black and brown jurors, talk about it, and which may result in excessive guilty pleas or things like that, and tie that in. And that's what we saw, and one of the reasons we asked for the Racial Justice Coalition even started asking to probe into the criminal legal system. I think that has to be tied in together. And where some of these other touch points, fines and fees, violator programs, the parole program, the work release, where we see that there is this disparity between Black and Latino and white people with touch points in the system, because there are not Black and Latino enough on the other side making decisions that affect Black and brown community members in the same way white community members who touch the system are affected. And then you will get the community seeing what we saw, where we even called for the Board of Supervisors to start a racial justice task force, which led to the oversight body. Because I think that that's the background story that's missed. Are you guys tracking with me?
I am. I think that there needs to be more breakdown into this, to be kind of zooming in on the areas, right? When we're talking about jury, when we're talking about these different pieces, to come back here and have this as something that gives the context, right?
Yeah, so the data matches the flow chart, right? So yeah, what we're seeing in sentencing on this flow chart is what we're seeing. The data is showing you that each one of these touch points is marred by a bias that's built into the system, and our data is proving it. So what you may know as a community member, what you see, your eyes aren't deceiving you, because the data is proving it. And I guess is what I'm trying to get to.
Yes. So it needs that context and framing when we go through it, and we don't just kind of be like, it's a complicated system and these are the different pieces, but really zoom in on those parts. Yes, and timing, we're past. So my appreciation to you all. I know that I will be seeing many, if not all, at our meeting next week, which is not subcommittee meeting as much as we're having this event, which I am excited about. When you get into the details, sometimes that gets a little bit lost about like, this is going to be cool. This is going to be something that we're taking action. We're moving it forward. We're not just talking about doing something, but we're doing something. Even if it is not making a policy, it's where we can launch to the next. So I'm coming into it with that mindset that this can be moving us forward, and we're only here because we care about these issues and we want to see this stuff change. So onward. Thank you all for your time and attention and energy We'll keep it rolling. Thank you, everybody.